This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to episode number 54 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Jerome Chirco, Vito Jerome Chirco, that is, alongside my sidekick, my partner in crime, and better than Seth Rollins, right? And the doc, John Macaroon.
Yes, sir, Vito. I'm super excited. As you can tell, I got a pep in my step. Finally, the Fox Sports Go app is now available on my phone. For those of you that are into your cell phones and watching and streaming sports on your phones, you're like, wait a minute, I've always been able to stream Fox Sports Go. Well, I'm a guy that has Dish Network. I've used satellite services for my television viewing habits for the better part of the last 12 years. And so finally, I was pushing the button, and I saw that Dish Network is now linking up with Fox Sports Go. I can finally stream the Tigers if I'm having a late-night recording here at the office, or if I just want to avoid the family and watch some Detroit Tigers baseball, I can finally watch it. And as we're recording this podcast, got the NFL Network on the right screen, got some UEFA Champions League soccer on the left screen. What else could a man ask for? Now I get a chance to talk with you for the next hour or so, pick your brain on what the hell's going on with the Tigers. It's all good, baby. What's happening?
It is all good in the hood. You're doing well. I'm doing well. The Tigers, are they doing well? So, right? We can say. And you were at Friday night's game at Chirco with your wife and had a good game, had some beers and whatnot. That was going well for you guys. But Michael Fulmer wasn't pitching well, didn't pitch well. Tigers lost 10-2, got blown out by the Red Sox in what was game 2 of the series of the 4-game set at Copa. So Tigers took the first one on Thursday, barely got it done. I was doing the blog for the Free Press, by the way. It was a dead zone for most of that game in the blog. And while I was blogging, got to see that whole entire thing and see where the Tigers almost blew it with K-Rod in the 9th. Remember that? The line drive, Kinsler caught it. I thought that was going into center field to be a game-tying single right there for the Red Sox. So Tigers, though, held on, got it done. Won game 1, lost game 2 and 3, got it done in game 4 as well with JV on the mound. And it wasn't just JV that got it done, obviously, Doc.
What was your biggest takeaway from the series versus Boston? I know everybody was looking at Fulmer and seeing what he was able to do, but they were able to rebound in Sunday's game in order to salvage a split in the series. A lot of talk about David Ortiz and his continued destruction of Detroit Tigers pitching and his ability to just crush home runs at Comerica Park. I mean, this guy is an individual that has just been a Tiger killer. And I was really surprised that he was still fed a heavy dose of fastballs in that series, and he got 2 out of Comerica Park. And so you're like, oh my goodness, what are you going to do? Let's just kind of move on from the series versus Boston. But a talking point came away from that series in that you wrote about it. A lot of people are still kind of talking about it in the fact that the Detroit Tigers decided to honor said David Ortiz before Saturday's game with a little ceremony. The general manager of the Tigers there, you give him a plaque celebrating his appearance at the Comerica Park All-Star Game. And a lot of people were like, we're not really down for that. But on the other end, a lot of people were like, hey, all competition aside, this is a future Hall of Famer. By now, people think that he's a good guy, has rebounded from the PED stuff, and people are like, well, let's just forgive him and give him an ovation during Sunday's game, a ceremony before Saturday's game. As a competitor, though, I was just against it from the moment I saw it. I was against it, but our followers, 80% that voted in our poll, had no problem with it, and they used the word classy to describe it.
Does it really make you classy, though? I guess so. It's sportsmanlike, right? And you got to use sportsmanship, respect your competitors, respect legendary ball players who are all-time MLB greats, and Ortiz is in that category now. But if you are a competitor, I don't think you totally admire the fact that the Tigers did that. Went out of their way to honor him in the fashion they did before Saturday's game. And then he goes out there Saturday and hits a home run, hits 2 more this weekend, has 23 now against the Tigers. I believe already had a record number of home runs at Comerica Park for an opposing ball player, too. So going into the weekend, now he has even more. Did more damage to the Tigers. And the damage started, realistically, for me as a Tigers fan, was seeing him and what he did in 2013 in the ALCS in Game 2 specifically. As I said in our little preview video on Facebook Live, And that killed me as a Tigers fan watching that, because they were almost there, going into Game 3 with the 2-0 series lead, going home for Game 3 in that series in the ALCS of 2013 with a strong starting staff. And they lost that Game 3 by a little score, like 1-0 or something. So their bats didn't come out, didn't come alive, and bring their A game. They should have, and if they did, they would have won that game still, regardless of what happened in Game 2. So they blew it for other reasons, or for reasons other than just Big Papi's home run, the grand slam to tie it up, because that just tied it up, by the way. They did have to win it then in the 9th, but they did. Both Sox won Game 2. And the big thing to take into account, or the moral of the story, is the momentum shifted big time in the series for the Bo Sox. It really did. After that Game 2 victory by the Sox, the Tigers, I don't think, were as confident of a bunch. And if you would have won Game 2 of the Tigers, you went into Game 3 with all the confidence in the world, and the Red Sox might have started pressing with their backs against the wall. That would have been an entirely different series, different dynamic, and all of that. That's what I believe. And also, with that being said, I believe they blew their best chance to win a World Series by not getting to the World Series in 2013, where they could have gotten sweet revenge against the St. Louis Cardinals, who beat the Tigers in the 06 World Series, the Tigers' first World Series appearance since '84. But their best chance to win it all was a year they didn't get to the World Series, but almost did, and I think would have if they would have won that Game 2 that Big Papi had to come and play a big part in as an adversary.
Now, Vito, a lot of people have kind of mentioned and brought up, well, how are you going to honor David Ortiz when you haven't put a statue up for Sweet Lou or Alan Trammell out there at Comerica Park? When I go out there and walk in the standing room section, out there in the center field, you see all the great statues. Do you see Alan Trammell? No. Do you see Lou Whitaker? No. But then on the field, you got your general manager and your two best players, arguably, Miguel Cabrera and Victor Martinez, yucking it up with them. It's just on a competitive note. I just thought publicly they didn't need to do that. It is classy to do it.
It is.
But
yeah.
You could do it behind the scenes.
Respect him still behind the scenes. Give him that guitar that the Venezuelans came through and got him right behind the scenes. That wasn't a Tigers team gift, but some of the players getting that gift for him, that was good enough for me. And you can still respect him as a competitor, as a great ball player that maybe is the best DH of all time. But then, like you said, Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker, have they been honored in the most rightful manner with a statue? And forget the statue. How about a jersey retirement ceremony for Lou or Alan Trammell? No. Come on. And you honor Big Papi, a guy who allegedly used PEDs, was in that Mitchell report, I believe it was, back in the mid to late 2000s.
2003 is when his name showed up in that report.
Think about it, an alleged roid user, and you honor him. And what if it comes out 3 years down the line, once he's done with the game of baseball, as it's been projected he will be by the end of the season. 3 years from now, after his retirement, it comes out that he did officially use the roids, and they honored him in that game on Saturday night, and then had a standing ovation for him in his final at bat as a major leaguer. I don't like that whatsoever, Doc.
Now, Vito, before we get to your guest, we'll tease a little bit what we're going to talk about after we interview your great guest that you booked for this show. We could talk a little bit about the PED use in the early 2000s, because you got to remember, it wasn't technically on the books illegal in Major League Baseball at the time. And so we'll talk a little bit about whether or not how you view those individuals that were in the report that came out and started this whole wave of looking at and testing for performance-enhancing drugs. But now let's get to your guest and tell us who's coming up next.
Al Willman of the Detroit News, a freelancer for the News and a blogger blogging about the Tigers and the Lions during their regular season games, and other games too for both squads and other squads here in Detroit. We'll be right back with Al Willman of the Detroit News. Hey guys, it's Vito Chirco here from Top Cat Sales in downtown Royal Oak. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Well, if you are, guys, look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street, and once again, downtown and lovely Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan quarterback John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the very highest quality and the very best service. So get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going online at TopCatTeamSales.com. Once again, Top Cat Sales' website is TopCatTeamSales.com. And remember to follow Top Cat Sales on Twitter at Team Top Cat. And now joining me on episode 54 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line, is a fellow prepster, freelancer, not for the Free Press, though, but for the Detroit News, and Mr. Al Willman. Al, how's it going today?
Hey, pretty good, Vito. How are you doing today?
Very good, sir, and thanks for joining me on this edition of the podcast. And first and foremost, let's get right into your blogging experiences. For the Tigers, I believe you've done it for the Lions, some other sports teams too, in Detroit in the past for the News. And for you, when you do get the chance to blog for a live sporting event such as a Tigers game, how is that experience for you typically?
Well, for me, half the time it doesn't feel like work. So, they say find a job you love and you don't work a day in your life, right? So for me, half the time it feels like I'm at the game watching. And a few times I've actually had the benefit to be at the game and blogging, so it's a really good experience.
Yeah, you've had that benefit of being at the games. I haven't. I'm blogging for the Free Press. They don't give me that honor, that perk. So that's a very nice thing to have in your favor there at the News, Al. And you had an interesting or rather unique journey to reaching the News. Talk to me about how you were at Eastern Michigan, but you had still a unique journey in becoming this writer that you are now in sports at the Detroit News.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it represents a lot of a second chance, really. I wasn't always a college student, and even dating back to my high school and days before that, I wasn't the best student in the history of the world. So I started going to school for a while. I graduated high school in 2006, took a year off, went back into college in 2007 for a couple semesters. And just at the time, it wasn't for me. It wasn't where I think I wanted to be going. I ended up meeting the woman who I ended up marrying. And so I thought that's kind of where my life was going to take me. Long story, it didn't. We ended up getting divorced and things happened. And so I decided at that point in time to go back to school. And that's where I wound up another semester at McCollum Community College and then at Eastern. And that's where I started getting into writing. My sister at the time was working for the Eastern Echo as their news editor. So she just said, hey, here's a job for you to make a quick buck just writing about sports, which is really good work if you can get it. So I was doing that and did pretty well, fell in love with the field of journalism. Within 4 months, I was sports editor of the paper. Another few months after that, I was managing editor. And now here I am at the Detroit News. You
had quite the epic rise, huh? From where you started at the Eastern Echo, and quite the name. I love that name for Eastern Michigan student newspaper. Do you know where it came from, by the way, Al?
I don't. I know it's been around since, a couple different iterations of the paper since the university was founded in the 1800s. So I don't know the origin of the name, unfortunately.
No problemo, sir. And now back to your blogging really quick before we dive fully into the Tigers and all their issues and I guess positives too in recent memory. And what I wanted to ask you is, when you're in these blogs, do you get these, kind of weirdos, these characters that come and attack you or maybe utilize some sexual innuendos even and go that far with their comments to you?
I've had a few interesting experiences with the commenters on various things. And obviously, you hear one of your journalists, one of the things they tell you, don't read the comment. I read every single one.
Uh-huh.
I read every single one. And, I've had some really good ones, some really productive ones, and some really off-the-wall comments. That's the fun thing about doing what we do is we get to, interact with everybody on a daily basis that, they come from all over the place. So it's a fun ride.
Yeah, usually it can be very engaging, and when it is, it's very fulfilling then. But when you got these experiences where it's like a dead zone, and I've had that at the Free Press with my blogs. I don't know for you, Al, if you've had that kind of experience where it can be dead and you're like talking by yourself, almost talking to a wall, it seems like. Do you have those kind of down experiences too?
Yeah, sometimes that happens. You a game going on, or where it's, in my experience, I've done Michigan or Michigan State games that are competing against other games that people are watching, or Tigers games that are competing against Lions games. So it's, trying to figure out where the people are, and, sometimes they're not going to follow your blog, and that's going to happen.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Definitely right. You can get the best of both worlds. Really, really exciting, or maybe not so much. And Tigers, hey, same thing with them, right? Very exciting at times, and then at other times, not so much. Now, we saw J.D. Martinez come off the DL, hit that home run there to win the ball game against Chris Sale and the White Sox on, I believe, a Wednesday night a few weeks ago. That was stellar. What a terrific moment in the Tigers season. But then all these downward stretches, these downturns, and really resulting from injuries, Al. So let me ask you, how would you sum up the Tigers season to this date?
I just say it's the perfect storm of things going wrong at exactly the wrong time. We're like in the springtime, things might be kind of up and down. You had the game against Max Scherzer in Washington where he absolutely laid waste to the Tigers. And then you had the game, I think it was either before that or after that, in Baltimore, where Justin Wilson came in and absolutely imploded. So you have times like that where you think, okay, doom and gloom. And, like you mentioned, the commenters, they're right there with us saying doom and gloom, season's over, pack it in. And then you go on this long stretch in the summertime where, hey, things are turning around, people are healthy, ball's going well, pitching's going well, this is working out. And then you get back now where we are here coming up on the home stretch where injuries are going on, quite a bit. You've got Justin Upton, who's maybe turning things around. If we're looking at Sunday's game, his monster performance. But then you've got the bullpen that's still a big, giant question mark. So it's just a lot of things going wrong at the wrong time.
People give up easily, though. We've seen that. It can be doom and gloom and then be totally excited and back on the bandwagon. What are you, though, Al Willman? Are you on the bandwagon? Do you believe in their playoff hopes and that they're existent still at this point?
I think there's always a chance. If you look at, getting hot at the right time is usually when the teams that make the biggest runs of the playoffs, they get hot, right about now or maybe a week from now and carry that through their playoff run. Or if you look at the Tigers back in 2006, they were hot up until the home stretch, lost the Central Division, ended up skating in on a wild card spot and going to the World Series. So anything's possible. Realistically, I don't think there's enough there unless the perfect storm of the right things happen, where people get healthy at the right time. You get the right September call-ups in here to kind of right the ship. But pragmatically, I don't think that's going to happen.
And it's Al Willman of the Detroit News on the phone line with me, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line. And Al, how can you think Justin Upton is going forward and getting his issues at the plate rectified completely, or at least to a high level?
Well, I think that the couple days off that he had, and obviously some time on the bench, helped him to square his head away. And if you look at Sunday's performance, 2 monster home runs. That's, against Boston, obviously a team that's had its ups and downs too. But I think getting him on the right page and getting him set away is going to do good things for this team if that can be sustained.
Very good. Now, Michael Fulmer, AL Rookie of the Year, looks like he has that locked up. How about for the Cy Young? Any chance at that, in your opinion, at this point?
Well, looking at what, obviously, if you pay attention to what Brad Ausmus said the other day, team's not going to really help him out too much in that regard with trying to limit his innings. And I think that's the one thing that's going to hold him back in the Cy Young conversation. Unless they decide to take that restriction off and just let him throw until his arm falls off, which I don't think is going to happen.
No, they really can't afford to do that. He's a rookie. You got to manage his innings a little bit at least, and they're watching out for that big time, as we know. So going forward this season, really quick, Al, before I let you go here on Tigers Talk, give me your bold prediction for the Tigers. How many victories I'm asking for? Above or under 85, in your opinion?
You know what? I'll take the over. I'm gonna say 91 wins, but again, that's something that's gonna, that high of a win count, that's gonna, spell likely a playoff appearance too. So I'm looking at 65 and 59 right now, 7.5 games back to Cleveland. I think going back, I think the possibility exists for the Tigers to get hot and end up winning 91 games,
which would mean potentially playoffs. So, I mean, you're on the hot seat. Are you going to go with the playoffs? And I know you kind of already said before no, but now you said 91 wins. So what are you going with?
I kind of talked myself into that corner.
You did. You got to get off the fence now. You do.
Yeah, I do. You know what? Have your fire alarm and your sirens ready, but I'll say a playoff picture here for the Detroit Tigers.
Hey, let's do it. Let's believe in it. And you know what? Hey, I think for me, I don't know what you feel about Brad Ausmus. Best case scenario, if the Tigers don't reach the playoffs, I think he's gone for sure at the end of the season. What do you think about that?
I think if the Tigers, even if they don't make the playoffs, the injuries, I think, will buy Brad Ausmus at least the first month or two of next season.
I've heard that narrative, and that's a scary narrative, Al. It's scary right there, man, about how it could buy him some time. And, I mean, I don't find much reason in still keeping him, but there's a reason right there, absolutely, for why Al Avila, I think, will, if he does.
Yeah, I was one of the people that back in April or May was saying, get rid of this guy, fire him, because obviously the results weren't there yet. But I think that outburst, that one we all know about,
yes, sir,
the sweater over home plate, and, and kind of going off. I think that's what bought him at least through the All-Star break, and then things went right at the right times for him to where Al Avila just said, you know what, we're going to stick with it for now and see where it goes.
All right, Al, fair enough. You believe he'll be back, and I like your predictions, like your takes, and I appreciate all your time.
Thank you very much, Vito. Thanks for having me.
All right, Al, you have a good one. I'll talk to you.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
And, Doc, that was Al Willman of the Detroit News, a blogger and freelance writer for the news on with me there here on this week's edition of the podcast, episode 54. And, Doc, he had some takes where he was on the fence a little bit, got off the fence. He predicted 91 wins for the Tigers to finish with. But disappointingly, he said if they don't make the playoffs, still Brad Ausmus comes back next year, Doc. And we cannot fathom that here on Tigers Talk.
I might need a couple minutes to digest that, but it's been talked about. It's a narrative that you said that you've heard, I've heard it, and one that I think a lot of fans just don't want to comprehend or really want to listen to, because when I hear that, all I do is get upset. I mean, this is a manager that hasn't really done a whole heck of a lot in the postseason, and that's where you earn your money. So to hear that narrative is disappointing. But listen, I understand that the Tigers have had a rash of injuries, but there is talk now that probably by the middle of September, we should have a ton of guys back, and hey, that might be just the right time for the stretch run to really see if they can, if the Tigers can make that push to get into the postseason. But to think about Brad Ausmus coming back is really kind
disappointing.
Really makes me sad.
It's a mellow inducer, really, isn't it?
You're bringing my Fox Sports Go buzz all the way down with that kind of talk, Vito.
Your high is all gone after that talk about Brad Ausmus coming back for another season, a fourth year as Tiger skipper. I don't want that whatsoever happening for the Tigers. Now, we had brought up the Tigers and the stretch run and what has to happen. Upton, good to see him being productive on Sunday, but is that one big game and an aberration, Doc?
You know, Vito, when you see what Justin Upton was able to do, you do have to kind of couch it by saying that Boston brought up a pitcher that doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of pitching experience at the major league level, and he was a guy that really you thought that the Tigers could take advantage of, and they were able to kind of crush him and get him out of the game pretty quickly on Sunday. But this is a guy that has been much maligned. He's been a guy that everybody's been criticizing. He had a couple days off like everybody wanted, and he was able to kind of chat with David Ortiz, the individual we've been talking about at the beginning of the podcast, and he had a game where he got 6 RBIs, 2 home runs. We need to see it. Whether you believe he can actually execute that, we have to wait and see. Most people don't have that faith. The majority of our followers and listeners believe that it was just one game. Everybody needs to calm down with that. There was this narrative that, hey, he's back, and this is the Justin Upton we're all looking forward to seeing. Hey, if he turns it on in the middle to late September when we need it versus the scrub teams and then versus the Cleveland Indians, we'll take it. I need Justin Upton to come out and earn that salary that he's making. And you see what he can do. Him, Cameron Maben, those are guys that in the lineup can make up for a loss of a Nick Castellanos. And so you need him to perform at this high level. It was nice to see. I'm just still a little bit more in the phase of continue to show me. You got to still do more than just that one game, because when you look at his game stats for the month of August, Jason looked at it on the Motor City Sports Rant, which airs every Tuesday on this network. They were terrible.
Oh, yeah, he's been horrible this month, outside of the big game on Sunday now, where he did get the rested 2 games there. That was probably good for him, and now maybe he's back to being relevant. Or are we jumping on the bandwagon too soon? It could be that as well. As that's the narrative right now. Are we on the bandwagon fully now, all of a sudden, after one big game by J Up? Or are we still approaching it rather cautiously because of J Up struggles all this year up until Sunday, realistically? And, Doc, I think I'm still going to approach his production and what I expect from him going forward cautiously because of the fact that that's a extremely small sample size. One game there against Henry Owens of all pitchers, who's a minor leaguer at this point realistically, and that's the best case scenario maybe for him going the rest of his Major League Baseball career, which might not even last that much longer. So for me, J Up, one big game, and that was probably it until I see a good series or 2 straight. Like, he's got to kill the Twins now and then kill the Halos, which he should do. You don't have Irvin Santana, by the way, going for the Twinkies. The only arm in their starting staff under 4 with an ERA of under 4. And then the Halos have all these injuries. Garrett Richards, Andrew Heaney, their rotation cornerstones are out for the season. C.J. Wilson out for the year now officially as well. And Jared Weaver, he's a shell of his old self. Tim Lincecum has been down now in the minors, trying to get back to what he used to be with the Giants 3-4 years ago, because he really flamed out with the Halos and the experiment the Halos conducted with him in their starting rotation. So he's a shell of his old self as well, with that being said. So the Halos, who do they have to rely upon in their rotation right now? Matt Shoemaker, who's Trenton's own, went to Eastern Michigan, like Al Willman, who was on the podcast today or this week. So you got a guy like that who's your saving grace at this point. He's not a true ace caliber arm at the top of your rotation. So they should beat up on the Twinkies. I don't care where it is. I don't care that it's at Target Field. And they should beat up on the LA Angels of Anaheim, because they are weak right now, injury depleted, and especially, as I said already, in their rotation, which means Upton should have his way to sum it all up, Doc.
Okay, so you're expecting a little bit of an uptick in his production the rest of the way. I just thought
the rest of this week, at least, I'll say.
It was hilarious, the narrative that came out after that game on Sunday. Oh, Justin Upton's back. This is the guy we're all looking for. And talking about, that this is a guy that can do some things when it's just one game. Everybody saw it was just one game versus Henry Owens. Now go out there versus a little bit better competition and stop being the strikeout machine, and maybe Justin Upton can get back into the good graces, because last week we were talking about him being potentially the worst free agent signing in the history of Detroit sports altogether. So it needs to turn around, and Justin Upton can help this team quite a bit. That's the one guy. Again, we'll say it over and over. That's the one guy, if he turned it around, could help this team exponentially. And even, I would say this, if you can get a guy that goes on a tear similar to the run that JD's on right now, you have a chance to get into that wild card and do some damage. Because then maybe the pitching staff can round into form. Now you have a potent, very scary offense. All you got to do then hope for is that the bullpen can be productive at the right time and get guys out with the Wilsons and Rondon and Kyle Ryan and your closer. Hey, all you can do right now with the Tigers is hope. So if Justin Upton can turn it around, that's the first piece. Then everything else can maybe round into form, because, hey, if you got Justin Upton back, maybe that sparks the entire team. Maybe that's a guy that they go, whoa, maybe the bullpen then picks up their percentage 5% in terms of, playing a little bit better. Maybe the offense even JD, maybe JD can even get better. Miggy, Vmart, and the starters, maybe Anibal Sanchez. Remember, I'm crossing my fingers hoping. I'm not
about all this. You're not predicting anything. I can tell right now, which you shouldn't be.
I'm just hoping, trying to spin it in a positive way. Yep. And you have to hope for a lot of things with these Tigers, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that you could have some success this year.
Now, Cameron Maybin, how big is he at the top of the lineup? I think he's that big-time spark plug that you need now going forward to be healthy and consistently productive, as he was in his first game back off the DL on Sunday. Surprisingly, coming back prematurely off the DL, was big, got a 2-run single, I believe it was, a 1-for-4. Looking good already. Relatively, extremely small sample size once again for him, just coming back from the DL to face, and of all pitchers, Henry Owens and the Red Sox, whose bullpen has struggled up to this point or in recent memory too. So how much can you take out of that? But also, how much is him coming back key now to maybe a potential offensive surge from the Tigers, Doc?
It's great to see Cameron Maybin, what he's been able to do. A guy that's been relatively underrated. Now people are starting to talk about him and really get excited behind what he's capable of doing. And so a guy like Cameron Maybin, he comes up and he gets clutch hits at Comerica Park. He's always on base. He's drawing walks. He's doing things that you need to do to be a productive team. And when he went out, you let out a collective, oh no, him and Castellanos and Zimmerman. Those are key injuries. A lot of teams can't rebound from injuries like that. But getting him back, it was nice to see, because it was kind of kept under wraps for a little bit.
It was. I saw Dave Hoke, who was on this podcast too, he writes for the AP, was covering the Tigers Saturday night game and said that in his Tigers notes that Maybin would be back in a week from Saturday's game. He came back the day after that game. That was surprising, and a big-time surprise in a positive fashion for the Tigers, to say the least, Doc.
Yeah, it was very nice to see, and if he can also contribute to that offense, the better off the Tigers are going to be. So, hey, a good week ahead. I read your article at the Free Press previewing this week's series versus the Minnesota Twins and the California Angels. For those that haven't read it, give them a quick synopsis of what you think is going to happen this week in the preview with the upcoming matchup, Minnesota on the road, and then a series versus Mike Trout and the Angels.
Well, they have Kyle Gibson they're going up against Tuesday night, the night of this recording. Wednesday, it is Tyler Duffy, who did well against the Tigers, only allowing 1 earned run the last time. Allowed 4 runs, though, so a little bit more than you think when you only say 1 earned run. But struck out like 7 in his last start against the Tigers. this year. Gibson hasn't faced the Tigers this season. And then I believe Jose Barrios, a youngster in the Twins rotation, is going on Thursday in that final game of the series against the Tigers. So a very winnable series, even though they're on the road where they've not been as good of a ball club this season. But you gotta beat up on the Twinkies, who are in the cellar in the AL Central. You cannot go into Minnesota and not win 2 out of 3. If they don't win 2 out of 3, very, very disappointing. And against the Halos, you got to win that series as well, Doc. And I think they will, because the Tigers have gotten that better starting pitching of late, even out of Anibal. Matt Boyd, big time, as we talked about last week ad nauseum. And JV, still JV. Fulmer now has to bounce back, but I think, have to believe he will against the Twinkies, who are hitting, though, remember, and he's good enough. We know he's good enough to do that, Doc, where he should definitely bounce back. So I'm hoping he does this week, and to sum it all up, the Twinkies can hit. I'm talking about the Twin Series here, they can hit, but the Tigers should be able to hit better. And with Upton now, maybe, big time if, but maybe coming to form now. Maben being back and healthy. Well, maybe they, even in a game where it maybe gets out of hand for the Tigers starting pitching, they can out-hit the Twins, who have Brian Dozier, a great performer for them right now. And he's done very, very well for them this season, as has Max Kepler, the rookie right fielder, has been a rookie standout for the Twinkies in the outfield. Great power numbers, had an AL rookie 15 bombs going into Saturdays, this past weekend, Saturday. So he's done it, really, ever since he was called up to the Twins Major League roster. So you got his bat, you got Dozier's bat, Miguel Sano, you got Joe Mauer, who's heated up as well in the month of August. He has 10 home runs now, or did going into Saturday once again, and that matched his home run total from all of 2015. So, and he's got an OPS right there at 800, right around there, and that would be the first time, if he gets to 800 with the OPS, that'd be the first time for Joe Mauer doing that in a long, long time. So I like what they have in terms of that, but it's still their stinky pitching the Twins possess, which means the Tigers should out-hit them and win the series against the Twins and do the same against the Halos at the end of the week.
Okay, I would say, again, keeping with the theme that we've seen this 2016 season, I would expect they're going to win 2 of 3 from Minnesota, and then I expect them to lose 2 of 3 from the Angels. Again, having a 500 week, and coming back, you're going to need. Most people are thinking that in this 9-game stretch, you're going to need to probably go 7-2, 6-3, but you're going to have to see how the Tigers handle a series starting off with Anibal Sanchez, because I wanted to ask you, is this a guy that has re-earned your trust, or is he a guy that you're still waiting to see if he can do it consistently? Because he's had a couple good starts, but you go, this is Anibal Sanchez, and he hasn't been that great. And when he has actually performed and gave you some innings, then they don't give him any runs. So it's a classic example of a guy that just is having a brutal season, and a guy that's nowhere near earning earning his contract.
I don't trust Anibal just yet. Now, I respect him maybe more for him coming back from his woes this season and looking more relevant, being more respectable than he was at one point in this year early on. So I think he can be semi-capable, but being fully capable and going at least 6 innings per start now from here on out, I still don't trust in him doing that. And especially after what I saw him do in Texas against the Rangers, a potent offensive attack 1 through 9. They're in Texas. That's a real legit offensive attack that other teams don't possess. Now the Twins are good, but they're not Rangers good in the Rangers lineup. There's no true comparison there between the Rangers lineup and then the Twinkies lineup. So Anibal, I actually do like his odds of doing fairly well, though, against the Twins, even though it's at Target Field. I think he can go 5 innings, probably even go 6, but getting more out of him than that consistently going forward and against some of the better or upper echelon ball clubs in the AL, yeah, I'm not going to expect that out of him just yet.
Okay, so we're all watching the Tigers now. We're checking out the schedule in September. People are kind of looking at it and going, well, it seems to be a favorable schedule, and you're going to play the team that's in first place in the AL Central a lot of times, roughly 7 more times. You're going to play the Cleveland Indians. And so the question that I posed to our followers on Twitter at Detroit Podcast was, at any point in time, and you asked your guest whether you thought that the Tigers were going to make the playoffs or have success, do you believe at any point in time, 7 games out as we record this, the Tigers will catch or surpass the Cleveland Indians?
No way, Jose. And because of the play of, maybe Jose Ramirez for the Indians without Yan Gomes, who didn't get Jonathan Lucroy, who's been a major success story in Texas so far with, I think 7 bombs there since he was acquired by Texas. So he's done really well. And, the Tribe have overall for a long time now this year. And one of the best records in all of baseball, and really from day one. So they are the Kings. I think we got to hand them the division, hand them the respect that they deserve at the top of the division in the AL Central. So I think they get it done, and the Tigers don't catch up to them. But can they get to a wild card spot? Well, it starts with beating up on the Twins, beating up on the Halos, beating the under-the-radar or the underachieving ball clubs, such as the Twins and Halos. In this now, how many games do we have here? We have 6 games overall here. 3 with the Twinkies, 3 with the Angels at Comerica to round out the week. So you got to win 2 out of 3 against both. And I think the Tigers can because, against the Twins, you have Matt Boyd, Michael Fulmer in those last 2 games of the series. They got to take 2 out of 3 there, and they can. And, they should. And against the Halos, why not? So this is where it's the ultimatum, right, for the Tigers this year. Whether or not they're going to show that they are a true, legit contender, a team that can take one of the 2 wildcard spots, I think it's going to be shown. If it wasn't shown last week, it's going to be shown here because they do bad against these teams. How are they going to have any chance at beating the Indians down the stretch this season? Right?
Exactly. And so Jonathan Will writes us, he goes, I don't see it happening, just not happening. Fingers crossed for an AL East collapse by 2 of the top 3 teams. Go Tigers. And so I think that's the prevailing thought with fans is that you don't really see the Tigers winning their way into the playoffs. You're hoping that you can continue to have the success that you've had, be around 500, and hope for a collapse from the teams around you. And you have to hope for the teams below you kind of cooling off. I mean, have you seen the resurgence of the Kansas City Royals? They've won, I believe, 8-9 straight. They're playing a great brand of baseball, and they're above 500 now, and they're catching up to you and to earn your spot, fighting for that second wild card spot. The Kansas City Royals are playing a good brand of baseball.
They are right now, and the Indians, they have these players who's performing at the right time. Jose Ramirez, like I said, getting production out of their catcher still at least a little bit here and there without Yan Gomes and whatnot. And Ramirez, and you got Carlos Santana hitting bombs, getting on base. I believe he has 27 or 30, maybe even home runs now already, or getting very close to 30. This guy gets on base, can hit for the power like he has, and has done it at a superb rate so far this year. Napoli, party at Napoli's, you got him superbly performing, all these guys, and now the Royals have these guys performing as well, definitely, and it's guys like Eric Hosmer coming to life, right? It really is, and Danny Duffy being an AL Cy Young candidate. So it's about all of that, the big names, but also the under-the-radar performers. And are they for real, though? Back to them. I think the Indians are. They're for real. They're going to stay at the top of the division. They're going to stay there, I think, the rest of the way this season, Doc. The Royals, though, will they stay in the AL wildcard hunt the rest of the season? What's your opinion?
My thinking is with the Kansas City Royals, they have, you thought when they won the World Series there would be a little bit of a hangover, and you saw that earlier in the season. Now they're playing, obviously that helped that they came into Detroit and swept us, but they're playing pretty decent, and you got to remember, they're the defending World Series champions, and so they're not going to go away without a fight, but I don't think they just have enough in order to make that run. I do believe they got to catch Houston, they got to catch the Tigers, and I just think that they caught us at a bad moment in the series when they played us. But I do think that you've seen that they're going to be pretty much around a 500 team the rest of the way as well. I like the Tigers' talent and potential a little bit more than Kansas City, but I would love just for a minute to have their bullpen for a week or so. My goodness, it would be awesome because you saw when they had a lead in Detroit when they swept us. Locked down. It was done. You really didn't think that the Tigers were going to come back at any point because they have what you would call a professional bullpen.
A World Series caliber bullpen. They've proven that in recent memory. Now, they don't have Wade Davis, but Kelvin Herrera, a great closer, a bona fide stud in the ninth inning, closing the door left and right. And they have had that going on for them consistently more and more this year as the season has progressed. And Ian Kennedy, his production. Danny Duffy at the top of the rotation as now a true ace there and a true AL Cy Young candidate. So they've had all this recent luck and success stories out of guys that maybe weren't going to be the most successful stories, let's say, going into the regular season for the Royals. So they're catching a bit of luck now, but have they been as lucky Not as much because of injuries to Moustakas, to Wade Davis. Lorenzo Cain hasn't been nearly as productive at the plate day in, day out either. So all those guys not producing as much, that's a telltale sign of the fact that the Royals haven't been as lucky as a ball club completely either this season. Until recently now, they've heated up. But all teams, I think, go on their hot streaks and then have their losing streaks, as did the Tigers. They were looking great before all the injuries. If the Royals suffer another injury, it's pretty much at this point for the Royals where there's no coming back from it. But the Indians don't have to worry about that. That's why I see the Indians staying at the top. They have that extreme amount of depth now because of guys like Tyler Naquin performing, even without Michael Brantley. Brantley being hurt now the rest of the way this year. And they're still doing it. So they're getting a lot of production out of those under-the-radar performers, as the Tigers were at one point, out of McCann, out of Iglesias. Now, Iglesias is hurt, but will be back here now. And I think they're saying by the end of the month, Iglesias, so he can be back. He's rehabbing already. So they got to get that kind of stuff, and then production, obviously, out of Upton, out of Maben, as much as they were before. And it'd be nice to get Collins back or to get a productive Moya back when the rosters do expand in September. And that's when they have some decisions to make where they probably will be adding some youthful ball players that can maybe produce and impact the playoff race for the Tykes.
Now, before we talk about steroids a little bit to end this podcast, I want to talk to you about probably the most questionable call that was made in the series versus Boston by Brad Ausmus. A lot of people are looking, in terms of his use of mathematics and his in-game decisions, and they're really looking at and speculating, well, hey, if we get to the postseason when it's crunch time and he doesn't use proper math to make his decisions, what are the odds you're going to have success? And so the biggest play in Game 1, where they won, was second and third, first base is open, and Betts is up to bat. And this is a guy that has just been on fire this year. And some people are arguing that Betts from the Red Sox is one of the top 5 players in all of Major League Baseball with how he's performing, with the clutch hits, and with, coming out of the blue with above a 350 batting average. So first base is open. And Brad Ausmus decides not to walk Betts. Now, the statistics will tell you that it was in his best interest to walk him, put him on first base because of his favorable matchups versus right-handed pitchers. And so K-Rod, I believe, was able to get him out, though. But he rocketed the baseball to Kinsler. And so you would say maybe potentially the Tigers got lucky in that Betts was, taken out of the game. He got out, and you were able to win the game. But most people looking at that play were second-guessing Ausmus, going, why would you let Betts even come up to bat and free swing it and take hacks at your closer when he's got favorable numbers and it's just playing out of his mind?
Well, you know what? The thing is, I don't think he trusts a lot of bullpen arms right now either. That's the thing. So you kind of have to – but you're saying he should have walked him. Mookie Betts has been great all year long, but I think still you got to trust in your closer or have him regain that confidence that he can get it done against the best of the best in Mookie Betts and the Bo Sox order. A lot of their lineup guys are truly legit all-stars, these bona fide studs. And Mookie Betts is a 5-tool guy. He's one of the best now in Major League Baseball, definitely with the power, with the speed, with the defensive ability. He can do it all, but I think you have to trust in your closer to get it done, Doc. I don't mind that decision so much. I mind more the fact that I want to bring up, it's a point I wanted to bring up too, in that his usage of another guy in the bullpen recently was not the best, in my opinion.
Shane Green,
back-to-back days, and in that 10-1 ball game after Verlander exited, you put him in that game, he gives up 4 runs. Now, he should have been better, but it is against the Bo Sox in a non-tight game situation, and you use him in that situation back-to-back days.
Wasn't it like a 10-1 lead?
10-1 lead on Sunday, and you used him. He's your setup man or a late inning guy that is used in tight game situations, not in a blowout situation. Why use him and waste him there? And then I know he had the idea of, Monday we have an off day, so we can burn him a little bit. But why burn him still in that situation? You use Mark Lowe or somebody else, or use your boy Bruce Rondon. You don't use Shane Green in that situation. And that's where I was PO'd after I found out about it. So I didn't watch it live to get perturbed when watching it. But I found out after the fact and was extremely perturbed that he did use him in that blowout situation, Doc.
Exactly. A lot of people did look at that too and go, well, hey, Brad Ausmus is trying to do whatever he can to win the game, and using Shane Green was probably a decision that could be debatable. But, hey, when you got that bullpen, Brad Ausmus every day can just walk in and be like, listen, the guy I choose just has to get the job done. Whatever you guys think, I have a bullpen that is inconsistent, and every day is just really a crapshoot whether they're going to perform or not. So if I choose Shane Green, he's got to go up there and get the job done. But yeah, 10-1 lead, that's Mark Lowe time, baby. But even Mark Lowe, when he gets in there, he just, man, I saw him pitch on Friday. Oh my gosh, man. He is just a guy that can't get guys out. He seems like he has good stuff, but it's hittable. He can't get guys out. And when we put him in there, I'm like, oh boy, it's not going to be good. I think he gave up 2 runs in the inning that he pitched on Friday. So it's just one of those things where the bullpen's just too inconsistent. You can't blame Brad Ausmus for really whatever decision that he makes. It's just he's going to be second guessed. He's got to learn to deal with it. But I was just wondering at this point in time, do you see any progression, any improvements with Brad Ausmus as a manager, decision making, in-game control of his pitchers, when to take them out, use of the bullpen? I still find some mistakes with base running. I still find mistakes where, you got guys that are, missing the cutoffs and things like that. You got guys that are, running home when they're not supposed to and things like that. But I feel like he's kind of stabilized where he's not hurting you too bad. It's just the clutch decisions maybe you could worry about.
That's what makes you jealous. I think his usage of guys and his lack of maybe reliable bullpen arms is where you become jealous of the fact that the Royals have an embarrassment of riches in their pen. Not as much as last year or in recent memory, 2 years ago, let's say, but still good, very good, and much better and reliable options than the Tigers have in their bullpen consistently. And the Indians have now a very good back end of the pen with Andrew Miller being used in all these different situations. Cody Allen can still get it done, maybe not the greatest closer, but was very good after the month of April. So for the Tigers and Brad Ausmus, is he getting better with the Tigers and how he uses those options that he does have in the late innings or just in his bullpen as a whole? No, not entirely. I don't trust him anymore. I don't think he's any more capable than he was before, but it does stink for him that he doesn't have the best options to use. It does affect him. It does. And that's where the difference is, I think. It does affect him. And that's where you don't totally know, well, with an extremely deep or much deeper bullpen, what could he maybe do, And because that's a big-time difference for me between, the Royals has been their bullpen options, and Ned Yost, he's had it much easier, an easier route or easier task with those bullpen options. The Indians now have an easier route or task with those bullpen options and when to use them. And that is Terry Francona in Cleveland, Ned Yost, as I said, in KC. So, you can't totally prove yourself when you don't have the best options to use, but still the bullpen has been better. And I don't find myself thinking that he's been more capable or has shown more of the ability to be a competent in-game manager with the options that he does have in his arsenal, which has been a good Shane Green for most of the season until recently. And it leads me to my next question for you now. And I think I answered your question that I still really, at the end of the day, I don't trust.
Thumbs down.
I don't trust Brad Ausmus. No, I really don't. But I wanted to ask you, who do you trust in the Tigers bullpen yourself now? You asked me that question last week. I wanted to ask you. Let's start with K-Rod. Do you trust him?
Ooh, thumbs up or thumbs down? Kind of neutral, but I would still say thumbs up. He's done the job, and you can count on him. Hopefully the day off really helped him out, and he can do some things versus Minnesota.
I kind of trust him. Okay, so moving on to Shane Green. Do you trust him?
Yes. I
think I do, too. At the off day, I think he'll be all right. I think they just badly used him there back-to-back days against the Red Sox. How about Justin Wilson at this point?
Paging Justin Wilson, we need you. We need the guy that showed up at the beginning of the year. Recently, his play's been too up and down. We need you to get back to getting guys out consistently because if we can't count on Justin Wilson, we're going to have problems.
Absolutely. Alex Wilson.
I trust him. I think they've used him in pretty decent spots in the last few times that he's appeared. He's done some things, but I'm okay with him, and he hasn't done too much damage in his recent appearances.
Kyle Ryan.
He's done okay. I would not say I trust him, but he's not devastating.
Okay, and then Bruce Rondon, your man. You love that flame-throwing ability of Bruce Rondon.
Right now, he's kind of lost me in terms of my ability to trust him. He's got great stuff, man. He throws the ball 100 miles an hour with ease. But right now, he's got to work on the art of pitching. He's got to work
the art of pitching, baby. The Jim Price line.
He's got to work on getting guys out, not just going up there and just throwing that fastball pitch after pitch after pitch. He's done some things, got better numbers. He's kind of rounding into form, but you don't trust him just yet because there's still performances. He goes out there and he gets hit a little bit. And he did, though, have a good performance, his last time out. And he's done some things where you could say, okay, he's starting the process of earning more people's trust. But when he goes out there, you still go, oh, boy, which Rondon are we going to get today?
Yeah, Rondon, it's still the same issue with them. I don't trust his flame-throwing ability. I'll still make fun of you for when Brad Ausmus does use him in ball games. And I wanted to ask you now really quick, for you, your confidence level with picking the Indians to win the AL Central.
I got a great bet going with Jason Jarvie. And if Cleveland makes the World Series, we're going to have a pizza party on Jason, and maybe we'll have the crew into the studio all together and have a good old time. But I put my money where my mouth was. I thought they were playing the best brand of baseball. You've seen the classic, now, the inside the park home run that won a game. That was awesome.
They've done that now. They've done everything. They've won every single way. I think it was Tyler Naquin, their rookie center fielder, taking the place of Michael Brantley. He's been superb. Davis has been superb out of nowhere. Mike Napoli, like I said, all these guys coming to life and doing so superb and not being expected to do so. And really, catcher is their only true void. Without Yan Gomes, where they could have gotten Jonathan Lucroy, they got vetoed, remember, by Jonathan Lucroy, and that was so incredibly right, in my opinion, as a Tigers fan. Watching that from the outside and seeing that transpire for the Indians. So, Indians, they don't have many weaknesses. And right now, with 7 games up on the Tigers, 7.5 games up, whatever it now is. And anyway, you slice it, they have a mighty large lead, a lengthy enough lead to the point where they're going to hold on. The Tigers are too inconsistent still. And with all the injuries, how can you pick the Tigers right now to catapult the Indians down the stretch with only so many games to go at this point, too? I don't think you can, Doc.
No.
I don't think you should either.
No, exactly. The Cleveland Indians, you're going to have to really do some things when you play them. That's the best way to do it. Is if you can go 7-0, that's the only way you're going to have a realistic chance, because I don't think they're going to come back to the pack. They're probably going to be the AL Central winning club, and they might do some things in the postseason. So now, to end the podcast, we talked about it earlier in the show. So, Vito, in 1994, let's set the scene here. The Major League Baseball probably did one of the worst things possible in order to hurt the fan base. And you cancel a World Series because of the ongoing labor dispute. They had a strike, and it really hurt one major club, and that was the Montreal Expos with Dave Dombrowski there. You had, Pedro there. You had a young Moises Alou there. You had a team that was young and prime, and when you saw the start to that season, they were playing a great brand of baseball. So when that strike happened, you really basically ruined the Montreal Expos, and they're no longer even, in part of Major League Baseball. So you thought that maybe this could be the first time a major sports organization takes a dive. And you go, oh, what brings it back? The long ball. Guys like Mark McGwire, guys like Sammy Sosa, when they had that summer and they were challenging for the home run lead, that was a great summer and brought a lot of people back to Major League Baseball. Chicks dig the long ball. They were going back and forth. When they played each other, they showed a sense of brotherhood. It became fun. And that was the catalyst that brought a lot of Major League Baseball fans back. Hence, a couple years later, you start going, oh, wait a minute. These guys were, quote-unquote, enhanced. And there was reports. And you saw warehouses getting raided. You saw places that were, making the steroids and administering, medicines, performance-enhancing substances to these athletes, getting raided and looked at. And you go, uh-oh. There was a steroid era in Major League Baseball, and some of the greats are not in the Hall of Fame at this time because of what happened back in the day. And you had, the classic scene where Rafael Palmeiro is in Congress pointing his finger, talking about, denying, his use of substances. But a name that was on there was David Ortiz. And he showed up in a report along with other guys. And the first guy that kind of started to spring the leak and talk about it openly was Jose Canseco in his book, Juiced. He would talk openly about, shooting up guys in the Texas Rangers locker room and and things like that. It was a great book.
Yep.
You should check it out.
I have it. Yeah.
I have
the first one.
I own it too. And you go, wow, that's how open he was. And at the time, because of the messenger, you didn't believe him. But it turned out there was a steroid era. But at the time, it wasn't really tested for in Major League Baseball. It wasn't looked upon as being really illegal, and no one really talked about it because I don't know if it was out of the realm of possibility that they didn't believe it was going on, or they turned a blind eye because it basically brought you back from the worst dark times that you had after the strike. But I wanted to just ask you, you knew that the steroid era was going on. I want to know your thoughts about it, but back in the day, if you put yourself in that mindset, and you're an athlete, you're about 6'4", and you know that they're really not testing for it. It's illegal nationally. It's against the law to use steroids nationally. But in your sport, baseball, they're not testing for it. You're not, or easy ways of, getting out of tests or finding ways of not getting caught. Would you have done steroids?
Would I have done steroids to get a competitive edge? I think
knowing that the testing is lax and in the baseball it wasn't illegal.
I think I'm of the ilk, though, where I don't care enough about getting that competitive edge. If I know I'm in the majors, good enough to be in the majors, I'm not going to do something illegal if I'm already there. Now, let me say this, though. Let me clear it up now completely. If I was in the minors and was struggling in the minors for a long time, I probably would have when it wasn't illegal, per se, as you said, Doc, already. And that's what the fact that we have to lament, right? We have to really detail that it wasn't. Not everything was illegal. So you could get away with it. And if you were a struggling minor leaguer who was in the farm for 5-6 years straight, couldn't get out of the farm, well, hey, you might try it out to get to the majors. But I think if you're a major leaguer, if I was a major leaguer back then, I would not have used roids. Because I don't think it's totally ethical. Never will totally advocate it. But there is a slight chance where I would have used it and would say for a guy that he has nothing else to fall back on. You're paying the bills of your wife, 2, 3, 4 children, and you're struggling to support them financially because you're struggling in the minors. Well, that's when you maybe get that magic needle out, or you ask Jose Canseco, hey, can you stab me in the behind too? Because I want that magic juice that you have. And maybe you won't become the slugger that Jose Canseco became and was, or that Mark McGwire was, or Sammy Sosa was, but you still become maybe more of a major league player, a guy that can then reach the majors and maybe stay there for a few years to be able to support your family then, subsequently financially. And that's a key thing, supporting your family. Can you do it without? If you can't, I say no way. But if you're a minor leaguer struggling and have nothing else, have a big family, and you're struggling financially, that's when I find maybe a reason for why you would and why I would have done so back then when everything wasn't illegal, Doc.
So how do you feel about guys like Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, Jose Canseco? Jose Canseco was out in the open. He was like, yeah, I take steroids. It's great for me. Helps me recover. In the thesis of the book, if you haven't read it or you're now a new age millennial who doesn't want to read anymore, what the thesis of his book was, steroids are great if they're not abused. He advocated for the cycling and the healthy use of steroids for athletes monitored strictly by doctors and not to be abused. He said, listen, steroids can help you recover. They help you get to be the prime athlete that you need to be. But when you abuse steroids, that's when you can get into roid rage. You can get into the situations like Lyle Alzado got into, and you can get really ill if you don't monitor it. He said, I cycled on and off. I learned about it. I didn't just willy-dilly stick a needle in my ass. I researched it and was able...
Who would, right?
Right, exactly. So he said, I was educated about it and I was wise, and look at me now. Jose Canseco aged pretty well. When you looked at him, he doesn't look his age. At the time, at least 5 years ago, the last time I peeked into Jose Canseco, he was looking pretty good.
He looks fine still, yeah, he does.
So what do you think about the guys that use steroids at the time? Guys like David Ortiz, the Big Boppers, the Bash Brothers, Sammy Sosa. How do you think about those guys? Do you call it the steroid era like a lot of writers do and go, absolutely not, I will not put anybody from that era into the Hall of Fame first ballot. They're going to have to wait, like a Roger Clemens who kind of got a little better with age. How do you feel about those guys?
They're egotistical pricks, and their legacies are tarnished forever. And should they get in, I think only a select few will. Well, Mike Piazza, I think, was alleged to have used steroids as well. Remember that with him. And he was a 60-something round pick who was a courtesy pick of Tommy Lasorda in L.A. That's Lasorda's godson. That's why he was picked, Mike Piazza, by the Dodgers when he was in the 90s or whenever it was. So he's a guy that turned out to be a stud, a Hall of Famer. I think he used some roids that enhanced his quality of play, and he got into the Hall of Fame. So guys maybe will and more will get in, but it will take a lot. Even for the best of the best that use roids that were good without the roids, such as Barry Bonds, a guy that I always kind of use as an example to say, well, look at him and all the quality play that he had before as an all-around ball player, maybe even better all around than before he used the roids. Then he got big, got puffy, got the big neck, wasn't as good defensively or as fleet of foot. So his all around play with the power was there, and he was a stud still and put up the 73 home runs and whatnot. But all around as a 5-tool guy, he no longer was that. So why did he use it? Well, he did because he's an egotistical prick. And that's why I don't think he'll get in, even though a guy like that, you could argue, Doc, because he was so good without the roids and won the MVP awards without the roids, that he should get in at the end of his candidacy for the Hall. So there is a debate there. Should a guy like that who was good without the roids, who was this egotistical prick, once I'm going to use that phrase, should he be allowed into the Hall at the end of his ability, eligibility to get in to the Hall of Fame? Because I think the lesser caliber guys that were nothing without the roids should not even be considered, which is like Sammy Sosa, should not even be considered. Jose Canseco was never considered. And they were great to watch. That was fun and everything. So we all enjoyed it. The chicks dig the long ball, like you said. But there's a certain point when you got to say that's enough, you know? And I think we have on that steroid era, and that's why those guys are not being allowed into the Hall.
Okay, I'm glad you didn't pose the question to me, because if it was nowadays...
Should Barry Bonds get into the Hall of Fame?
I think he's a Hall of Famer.
You would vote for him right now?
I would vote for him. I would maybe put a little asterisk by it, but I think he qualifies as a Hall of Famer, because before he puffed out, he was doing some things too, and he had some solid numbers. It's an ethical question.
Yeah.
It's an ethical question. The writers have kind of taken upon themselves to say, hey, we're going to use this power to, punish the guys that did it. But in my opinion, I would face an ethical dilemma if I knew I was staring at millions and millions of dollars and I was able to secure the future of my family. But I would definitely do research on it. But
you're sounding like you would do it. You're considering it more than me. But I did bring up the fact that I would maybe too as a minor leaguer. Now, would you have to be a struggling minor leaguer that couldn't support your family to do it? Or would you still do it even in the majors as a Barry Bonds-esque all-star
Vito,
player?
You're still hearing reports of guys still doing it because the money's so big.
Yep.
I mean, when you're talking about potentially making $35 million a season, upwards of $300 million deals, at this point in time, most people probably would think about it. But, knowing that it's illegal, if there were severe consequences, like if there was a lifetime ban, if you got caught with PEDs, I'd never do it. But at the time, the caveat that you got to kind of throw in there was, would you do it knowing that the worst punishment you're going to get is poor favor from people?
Yeah.
I might take that with a nice fat $500 million bank account and take people not liking me versus, if they had said, hey, you're banned for life with one positive test, I'd never do it.
Well, now it's where you're suspended half the season for one suspension, two-time offender suspended the whole entire season, and then you get what after that? It becomes lengthier and lengthier, and you can actually receive a lifetime ban at a certain point when you are an offender way too many times, obviously. And that, hey, you got to smart up right at a certain point. So maybe taking the risk once, but you keep taking it. How stupid can you be to keep taking the risk? And back then when everything wasn't illegal, you know what? The offenders didn't receive big-time suspensions, too, so the risk wasn't as high for what would come down on them. In terms of a suspension back then, it wasn't as big of a fine, as long of a suspension. So for them to do it back then, it wasn't as a risky of business. Now it is to the point where you got to really watch out, and I think it's just something that's too risky. Too big of risky business. And if you're a major leaguer already, there's no way you should be doing it. As a minor leaguer, if you get caught, okay, maybe one-time offender, and then you learn from it, and then you get past it and move on. And hopefully you have something else to fall back on if you don't have the chance to get out of the minor leagues, And, Doc, you've seen guys that have struggled after being caught with the roids. Ryan Braun, bodies breaking down prematurely. But I was going to say, actually, my really big point was about how, a guy like Jose Canseco is still a physical stud, and it can help you, get into a good shape after an injury when recovering, like you said. So I see a reason right there, Doc, too, when you're recovering from an injury to use it as well. But all around on the large scale, should people be roiding up? No, because it presents or provides you with an unfair advantage usually, especially if you already have some, like I said, ability like Ryan Braun. That was ludicrous for him to use it. And then he won a series against the D-backs back in 2011 against Kirk Gibson's D-backs. Gibson will never forget that because Ryan Braun helped win that series on roids. That's when it's really, really wrong too. And when everything should receive an asterisk, as Barry Bonds should receive that asterisk too. He really should receive that on his name, for the home run title and everything, breaking the single season record even, and the career record. He should have his legacy always be tarnished. But my other thing really quick to ask you about this was, should there be a steroid wing in the Hall of Fame for a guy like Barry Bonds?
No, listen, the writers are taking upon themselves. Just my honest opinion that he had Hall of Fame numbers.
Uh-huh.
You have character guys. Character is something that I'm not exactly sure yet how I feel, whether or not that should be a determining factor. I understand guys like Pete Rose will never make it because he broke a cardinal rule. So I don't want to make exceptions. But, character, I got to think more about it. But no, there should not be a steroid wing in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. It's just the writers are the guys that are the gatekeepers. If they decided that that's a big no-no, that's the way it is.
Who could use that magic needle the most right now in the Tigers?
Justin Upton,
right? Big time. So what do you see out of him this week, Doc, really quick before we end this discussion today?
I see him reverting back to how he was. I think he's going to have let's say 4 at-bats, 7 days, 28, he's going to go 10 for 28.
And you know what? I have a candidate, an outside candidate for you that's not a non-Tiger. I know we do Tiger stock, but Gary Sanchez of the Yankees catcher right now, young stud there. 8 home runs in 17 games, I believe, for the Yankees. As a rookie, has been a stud. He should be the non-Tiger toast of the town, in my opinion. Just giving you an outside candidate from outside the Tigers organization. Now, do you have a real Tigers, though, toast of the town for this week's edition of the podcast?
It's got to be Justin Upton. Hey, let him
one game
enjoy.
only. It was just one game now, right?
Listen.
And we just talk about how this is small, extremely small sample size.
Yes, but still he gets to be toast of the town because he had a week off, and a lot of guys with that could pout, could really take a downturn. He could have had another offer. Came back, did something finally to help the team win when it was needed. So, hey, we're only doing this podcast once a week.
How about JD Martinez, though? You forgot all about him.
I didn't forget about him. He's great.
Is he the toast of the town?
But I can't get the guy
runner-up?
I can't get the guy drunk, having him be sitting next to me drinking all the time, man. We got to have somebody else join me for the party. So this week, Justin Upton.
Now, Buster of the week, Brad Ausmus, Shane Green. How about Shane Green? Who is your Buster of the week? I'm going to say, I guess, Shane Green because back-to-back, some bad bullpen outings out of him recently. So I got to go with Shane Green. Or the manager that chose to use him two straight days.
Neither.
Okay, who do you got?
Don't look with athletes through rosy-colored glasses. Ian Kinsler's had a terrible week. He's slumping, so he's the Buster of the week. He's got to turn it around. He gets a pass in that he's had such a great season, but if you look at his numbers this past week, they weren't good. Doc's Buster of the week, Ian Kinsler.
Very good. And with that, we love Ian, but we gotta say what is true, and he has struggled recently. I will admit that as well, Doc. And hopefully we don't struggle.
So end the podcast by saying, good call, Doc. You're absolutely right.
Oh, you want that? You want that out of me? Good call, Doc. You are right, kind of. Right enough. How about that? You are right enough. And hopefully you'll be right kind of again next week on episode 55 of Tigers Talk. When the Tigers hopefully are playing some better baseball, right? And maybe pick up some ground in the wild card race, especially maybe even in the division race. Doc, thank you. Thank you to Al Willman of the Detroit News as well for joining us on this week's edition of the podcast. Talk to you guys all again, once again, next week. Goodbye.